No one expected that Pam Reynolds Lowry, a woman facing a life-threatening brain surgery, would make a statement that would stir the public. Her 1991 near-death experience, where she observed her own surgery and met deceased relatives, challenged conventional views on life, death, and the afterlife, sparking widespread debate. In the spring of 1991, Pam Reynolds Lowry's life was about to change in ways that she could never have imagined. What was supposed to be a routine brain surgery turned into a life-altering event that would lead to one of the most profound near-death experiences ever documented. Pam was suffering from a massive aneurysm, one so large that without immediate surgery, her chances of survival were slim. The decision was made to perform a rare and complicated procedure to remove the aneurysm, and Pam's life was in the hands of a skilled surgical team. The surgery began, and Pam was put under general anesthesia. But what should have been a routine, unconscious experience soon turned into something entirely unexpected. In the process of the surgery, Pam's heart stopped beating. She had no pulse, no breathing, and most remarkably, no brain activity. She was clinically dead. However, that didn't mark the end of her experience. Instead, it was only the beginning of a journey to an uncharted and extraordinary realm. Pam's experience began as she found herself floating above her own body. She was fully aware of what was happening around her, even though she should have been unconscious. Pam could see the surgeons working on her, their voices muffled and their hands moving swiftly as they operated on her brain. There she was, suspended in a place that seemed both familiar and otherworldly, watching herself lying on the operating table below. The clarity of her awareness was astonishing. She could describe the details of the procedure, the tools they were using, and even the sounds of the surgical instruments, all of which she could not have heard while under anesthesia. Pam was not just a passive observer. She felt the sensation of moving through space, as though she were gliding effortlessly in a weightless state. As she floated above the operating room, she could hear the voices of the medical staff. They were discussing her condition, but she couldn't comprehend why she was so aware of everything happening around her. She knew that her heart had stopped, and yet, there she was, more conscious than ever before. The remarkable aspect of Pam's experience was her ability to accurately recall the events that took place in the operating room. She described specific details, like the surgical tools, the position of the doctors, and even the buzzing sound of the heart-lung machine. All of these things were impossible for her to know, yet she knew them with complete certainty. At one point, Pam described hearing a doctor remark, "We're losing her," which, as it turned out, was an accurate description of the critical moments of her surgery when her heart had stopped. But her experience didn't stop there. While observing the surgical team and her own lifeless body, Pam also felt a strange sense of calm. Despite the chaos of the surgery and the intense procedures being performed on her, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace and acceptance. She wasn't afraid, as she might have been expected to be. Instead, she felt a deep, unshakable reassurance, as if she were being guided through something greater than herself. Her consciousness continued to expand, and Pam felt herself being drawn into a tunnel, moving through a dark yet inviting space. It wasn't a frightening experience. Rather, it felt like she was being led towards something, a light, a presence, something that promised to answer the many questions that had long lingered in her mind. As she moved through this space, she began to see flashes of light, more vibrant and more intense than anything she had ever experienced. Pam's encounter during her near-death experience during the surgery would not only change her view of life and death, but would also spark a curiosity that would lead her to search for answers about what lies beyond the physical world. Her story, one of consciousness beyond the body, was a groundbreaking example that challenged the conventional understanding of death. It wasn't just a momentary blip in her life. It was an awakening to something larger than herself, something beyond the scope of human comprehension. What Pam experienced that day in the operating room is still a topic of great interest and debate among researchers, doctors, and spiritual thinkers. To this day, it is one of the most remarkable and deeply moving accounts of a near-death experience that has ever been shared with the world. Pam Reynolds Lowry's experience serves as a reminder that even in the most uncertain and terrifying moments of life, there may be a deeper truth waiting to be discovered. During the life-threatening surgery that took place in 1991, Pam Reynolds Lowry's experience as she was clinically dead for a period of time was nothing short of extraordinary. While her body lay lifeless on the operating table, Pam's consciousness remained vividly active, allowing her to witness the events unfolding around her with an astonishing level of detail. Pam's near-death experience was not just a vague or blurry recollection. She was able to observe the surgical team's actions with such clarity that it defied the physical limitations imposed by her medical condition. Despite being in a state where she should have had no sensory perception, Pam reported being able to hear the voices of the doctors and nurses as they carried out the procedure. She described them as speaking in hushed tones, their words muffled by the sounds of the medical equipment. What was even more remarkable, however, was the precision with which she recalled the details of the surgery, all of which she could not have known through any conventional means. One of the most significant elements of Pam's account was her ability to accurately describe the surgical instruments being used during the procedure. She mentioned specific tools that were employed in the operation, tools that were out of her line of sight and could not have been seen from the position of her body on the operating table. Yet she was able to describe them in precise detail, down to the sounds they made as they clicked or moved across the sterile surfaces of the operating room. Pam was also able to recount the positions of the doctors and their actions in real time. For instance, she described one of the surgeons, who was focused on the aneurysm, and another who stood near the heart-lung machine, monitoring Pam's vital signs. At one point, she even recalled hearing a conversation between the surgical team, in which one of the doctors mentioned, "We're losing her." This statement turned out to be an accurate reflection of the critical state Pam was in at that very moment, when her heart had stopped and her body was no longer functioning in the conventional sense. Pam's mind was fully aware, yet her body was devoid of life. In addition to these vivid auditory and visual observations, Pam also felt a strange sense of detachment as she observed her own body from above. She described looking down at herself lying motionless on the table, surrounded by the medical staff, and yet felt no fear or panic. Instead, she was filled with an overwhelming sense of calm and serenity, as though she were watching a scene from a distance, untouched by the life-and-death drama playing out before her. Pam was not only able to perceive the external environment with a heightened sense of awareness, but also described the peculiar experience of hearing sounds from the equipment surrounding her, which could not have been transmitted to her under normal circumstances. She vividly recalled the mechanical hums and beeps, the steady rhythm of the heart-lung machine, and the occasional click of the monitors, a sequence of details that she could not have known had she not been fully conscious in that moment. Her ability to recount these specific events that she should have had no access to during her clinical death, raised profound questions about the nature of consciousness. How was it possible for her to have been aware of these details when she was, according to conventional medical knowledge, completely unconscious and clinically dead? Pam's experience provided compelling evidence for those who believe in the existence of consciousness outside the physical brain. For Pam, the surgery had become more than just a medical procedure. It had transformed into an undeniable exploration of life, death, and the profound mysteries that lie between. This aspect of Pam Reynolds Lowry's near-death experience is one of the most studied and debated parts of her story. It provides not only a deep personal account of her encounter with death, but also offers invaluable insight into the possibility of consciousness surviving beyond the boundaries of the physical body. The clarity and specificity with which Pam was able to describe the surgical procedure have left many in awe, as they challenge the very foundations of how we understand life, consciousness, and the nature of reality. During the period Pam Reynolds Lowry was clinically dead, something extraordinary occurred. Not only did she observe the surgical procedure in remarkable detail, but she also had an encounter with deceased relatives that profoundly shaped her near-death experience. According to Pam, this was not just a vague or fleeting vision. It was a deeply vivid, emotional, and life-changing experience that revealed to her the reality of an afterlife. Pam described being in a realm of light and serenity, a place that was beyond anything she had ever experienced. This wasn't simply a dream or a hallucination. It felt like an awakening to a higher plane of existence, one filled with peace and love. It was in this space that Pam found herself meeting loved ones who had passed away before her, people who were an integral part of her life. Among them were her grandmother and her uncle, both of whom Pam had known and loved deeply. Their presence, she recalled, was overwhelming and filled with an indescribable sense of comfort. Her grandmother, whom Pam had been especially close to, greeted her with warmth and tenderness. Pam recalled that her grandmother had an almost radiant presence, exuding love and calm. The moment was not only emotionally profound, but physically comforting as well. Pam felt an incredible sense of peace as she embraced her grandmother, an experience that transcended the limitations of the physical world. Her uncle, too, appeared to her, his familiar face filled with kindness and a deep sense of compassion. Both relatives assured her that everything would be okay, that she was safe, and that the transition she was experiencing was part of a natural process that led to something even greater. The vividness of these encounters was not just about the people Pam saw, but also the environment that surrounded them. Pam described the realm as being suffused with an ethereal light, a light that was neither blinding nor harsh, but rather soft and gentle, radiating love and peace. There was no pain, no fear, just an overwhelming sense of calm and understanding. The beauty of this space was not limited to the visual. It was felt deeply in her spirit, a knowing that she was exactly where she was meant to be. It was as if the entire realm was designed to convey a deep sense of reassurance and love. And the deceased relatives she encountered seemed to embody this reality perfectly. Pam's encounter with her deceased family members was not a fleeting experience, but one that lasted long enough for her to have meaningful conversations with them. They did not directly tell her that she would die soon, but their presence and words conveyed an unspoken message. They spoke of peace, of love, and of a reality beyond death that was far more profound than she had ever imagined. They gave her a sense of comfort and encouragement, telling her that the journey she was on, though it seemed uncertain, was a necessary step in her spiritual growth. Pam could feel their love and support, and in that moment, she felt no fear, just an overwhelming sense of being loved and cared for. This part of Pam's near-death experience was not just about reconnecting with loved ones, it was about receiving a glimpse into a higher truth. Her relatives' appearances were not mere visions but meaningful encounters that revealed to her that death was not an end, but a transition to something greater. The peace and comfort Pam felt in that moment were so profound that they have stayed with her ever since, providing her with a deep sense of reassurance whenever she reflects on her experience. The love, the light, and the presence of her deceased relatives have helped to shape her understanding of the afterlife, giving her a perspective that transcends fear and brings comfort in knowing that we are not truly alone, even in death. Pam Reynolds Lowry's experience with her deceased relatives is one of the most powerful aspects of her near-death story. It offered her, and continues to offer, proof of the existence of an afterlife, not as an abstract concept, but as a tangible and real encounter that can be experienced by those who find themselves at the threshold between life and death. This encounter has not only shaped Pam's understanding of the afterlife, but has also inspired countless others who are seeking answers about life beyond this world. For Pam, meeting her loved ones in the afterlife was more than just a comforting experience. It was a profound revelation about the eternal nature of the soul and the ongoing connection we have with those who have passed before us. Pam Reynolds Lowry's near-death experience, like many others, has sparked a wealth of theories and debates among researchers, medical professionals, and spiritual thinkers. While some look at her experience through a scientific lens, others lean into a more spiritual interpretation, and the resulting discussions touch on both physiological and metaphysical explanations. Theories attempting to explain the phenomena she encountered aim to bridge the gap between the mind, body, and spirit, offering different perspectives on what could explain such vivid and meaningful experiences. One of the most widely discussed theories behind near-death experiences is the physiological explanation. Some medical professionals and researchers suggest that what Pam experienced could be attributed to physical factors at play during the time she was clinically dead. For example, they point to the fact that Pam was undergoing an extremely intense and life-threatening brain surgery. During this time, her brain was deprived of oxygen, and it's believed that such a lack of oxygen, referred to as hypoxia, could lead to vivid hallucinations or altered states of consciousness. These hallucinations may be caused by the brain's attempt to make sense of an overwhelming or terrifying situation. This explanation suggests that the visions Pam experienced, such as meeting deceased relatives and seeing the bright light, were merely products of her brain's activity in response to the lack of oxygen and other stressors. Another theory that has gained traction is that near-death experiences are related to the brain's release of endorphins or other chemicals. Some researchers propose that the release of these natural chemicals during extreme stress could lead to the feelings of euphoria, peace, and love that many people report during near-death experiences. In Pam's case, the warmth and comfort she felt during her encounter with her deceased relatives could be seen as the result of these chemicals being released into her system. This view suggests that while the experience felt real, it might not be evidence of an afterlife, but rather a response of the brain to a life-threatening situation. On the opposite end of the spectrum, there are those who propose a more spiritual explanation for Pam's experience. This theory argues that the experiences Pam had, including the encounters with deceased family members and the sense of transcendent love and peace, were not the result of physical or psychological processes, but a glimpse into the afterlife itself. According to this view, the soul, or consciousness, does not die with the body, but instead continues on after physical death. Pam's experience, they argue, is evidence of the continuity of consciousness beyond life and death. The vividness and emotional depth of her encounter with her relatives, as well as the overwhelming sense of peace and love, is seen as proof of a spiritual reality that transcends the physical world. Supporters of this view believe that near-death experiences offer a direct connection to a higher realm and provide insights into the nature of life after death. Pam's own interpretation aligns more closely with the spiritual explanation. After her experience, she has expressed a deep belief in the continuity of consciousness and the existence of an afterlife. She speaks of the profound sense of peace and love she felt during her encounter with her deceased relatives, as evidence that life does not end with death, and that there is something greater beyond this physical existence. For Pam, the experience provided not only a glimpse into the afterlife, but also a deep sense of reassurance about the nature of life and death. It gave her a sense of purpose and direction in her own life, knowing that her loved ones were not truly gone, but that they existed in another realm, one that she believed was filled with love and light. Another important theory that ties into Pam's experience is the idea of consciousness as a separate entity from the body. Some theorists argue that consciousness is not confined to the brain, but is a non-material force that continues to exist even when the body ceases to function. According to this theory, near-death experiences are moments when the soul or consciousness temporarily leaves the body, providing an opportunity for individuals to have encounters with deceased loved ones or experience the sensations of an afterlife. This view holds that consciousness exists independently of the brain, and that Pam's experience was a reflection of the soul's journey during the time her body was in a state of clinical death. Pam Reynolds Lowry's near-death experience stands as a testament to the complexities of the human consciousness and the mysteries that surround death. Whether one subscribes to a scientific or spiritual explanation, her experience raises important questions about the nature of life, death, and what may lie beyond. While the theories surrounding NDEs remain a subject of debate, Pam's experience continues to serve as a source of inspiration and a reminder that the boundaries between life and death may not be as clear-cut as we once believed. Her story has brought attention to the need for more research into near-death phenomena and the possibility that there is more to human consciousness than we have yet to understand. Pam Reynolds Lowry's near-death experience has had a profound impact on the broader understanding of life after death, influencing not only the fields of medicine and psychology, but also shaping philosophical and spiritual discussions about the nature of consciousness and existence beyond the physical realm. Her experience, which involved detailed perceptions of her surgery and encounters with deceased relatives, provides powerful evidence for many that consciousness may continue after the body ceases to function. This has contributed to an ongoing conversation about the possibility of an afterlife and the nature of human consciousness beyond death. Pam's detailed account of observing her own surgery while being clinically dead, hearing conversations, describing surgical instruments, and even recalling details that she could not have known due to her lack of physical senses, has been central to the discourse on near-death experiences. Researchers and doctors who have studied her case, along with other similar accounts, suggest that the vividness and accuracy of her perceptions challenge traditional scientific explanations for consciousness. Many believe that her experience is difficult to explain purely in terms of brain function, especially given that she was in a state of complete clinical death, with no brain activity and no circulation. Pam's ability to recall these details has led to the idea that consciousness might be separate from the physical brain, further fueling the debate on whether life after death is a tangible reality. Pam's experience has also had a deep personal impact on her life and worldview. Before her surgery, she did not hold any strong beliefs about the afterlife, but after her near-death experience, she became a firm believer in life after death and the continuity of consciousness. This shift in belief has influenced how she views the world, death, and the nature of human existence. Pam speaks of the peace and love she encountered in her experience, describing it as a reassurance that death is not the end. For her, the sight of her deceased relatives and the feeling of love and comfort they gave her were proof that there is more beyond this physical world. This newfound understanding of death has provided her with a sense of peace and purpose, which she has shared in interviews and public talks. The impact of Pam's case extends beyond her personal beliefs. It has contributed significantly to the ongoing research into near-death experiences and the possibility of an afterlife. Her story has been cited in academic studies and medical literature, with many researchers using it as evidence to support the idea that consciousness may persist beyond physical death. This has led to greater openness within the scientific community toward exploring non-material aspects of human existence. While not all scientists agree with the spiritual interpretation of NDEs, Pam's case has opened the door for more research into the unexplained aspects of human consciousness. Moreover, Pam's experience has resonated with countless people around the world who have had similar encounters or who are seeking reassurance about the afterlife. Many who have read or heard about her experience report feeling comforted and uplifted, knowing that Pam's experience suggests that death is not something to fear. Instead, it may be a transition into another realm, filled with love and peace. For those facing the loss of loved ones or grappling with the idea of their own mortality, Pam's story provides a sense of hope, suggesting that death may not be the final end, but the beginning of something greater. Pam Reynolds Lowry's near-death experience remains one of the most compelling and thoroughly studied cases in the field of near-death studies. The insights gained from her experience have helped to shift the conversation about death from one of fear and finality to one of continuity and hope. Her story serves as a powerful reminder that the mysteries of life and death are far from fully understood, and that there may be more to human consciousness than meets the eye. Whether viewed through a scientific, psychological, or spiritual lens, Pam's case continues to inspire those who seek answers about what lies beyond this life.